Quick question. When was the last time you had a day where you did absolutely nothing you were obligated to do? Not a day off you had to earn. Not a weekend you spent catching up on errands. An actual day where no one expected anything from you. If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone. And your body is struggling right along with you. For most of human history, that question wouldn't have made sense. Not because your ancestors were working themselves to exhaustion every single day. The opposite. Rest wasn't something they scheduled. It was just built into how a day worked. You've probably absorbed a very specific image of prehistoric life. Constant danger, non-stop labor, a grim, exhausting scramble just to survive until tomorrow. That image feels obvious. It's also almost completely wrong. In 1963 and again in the years that followed, anthropologist Richard Borshay-Lee spent extended time living among the Ju-Hwanzi, a sand hunter-gatherer people in the Kalahari Desert of southern Africa. He tracked exactly how they spent their time: hunting, gathering, tool-making, food preparation, everything. What he found didn't fit the grim survival story at all. Adults spent roughly 15 to 20 hours a week on subsistence work, not 15 to 20 hours a day. A week. Sit with that. A modern full-time work week is around 40 hours before you even count commuting errands or the emails you answer after dinner. The people Lee studied were meeting all of their food needs in less than half that time, using nothing but their own knowledge of the land and each other. So where did the rest of their time go? Talking, resting, making music, childcare shared across the group, naps, actual unscheduled naps in the heat of the afternoon. Lee's data became part of a broader anthropological reframing, sometimes summarized under the phrase, the original affluent society. Not affluent because they had more, but because they wanted less and had enough time to enjoy what they had. You're probably thinking, sure, but that's one study, one group, one moment in time. Fair. So look at what came after. Decades later, anthropologist James Sussman spent years living with and studying the Ju-Hwanzi as their world changed under the pressure of modern economies. His research, including his book, Affluence Without Abundance, documented the same pattern Lee had found, along with something else. What happened when a rest-integrated way of life collided with wage labor, land loss, and the modern demand to always be productive? The shift wasn't gentle. It came with real costs to health and social cohesion. Sussman's work makes something uncomfortable very clear. Constant work isn't the ancient default that modern life freed us from. It's closer to the opposite. Here's the gut punch part. If constant unbroken labor isn't what your body evolved for, then every day you spend without a real break isn't neutral. It isn't just tiring. It's a departure from the operating conditions your physiology was built around for the vast majority of its history. You might be telling yourself something like, sure, but modern life is just more demanding. There's more to do. More people dependent on me, no way around it. That's the story almost everyone tells themselves. It's also the story that makes chronic overwork feel inevitable instead of chosen. Because here's where the evidence gets even stranger. It's not just about how many hours people worked. It's about what happens inside the body when rest disappears entirely. In 2015, sleep researcher Jerome Siegel and colleagues at UCLA published a landmark study in the journal Current Biology. They fitted members of 3 traditional societies, the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia, with wrist monitors that tracked sleep and activity around the clock for weeks at a time. These were groups living without electricity, without alarm clocks, without screens. The researchers expected to find long, deep, undisturbed sleep. Some idealized version of natural rest. What they actually found surprised almost everyone. Average sleep duration across all 3 groups was around 6 to 7 hours a night, not dramatically different from a modern, well-slept adult. No consistent midday napping as a cultural default. No mysterious ancestral sleep secret waiting to be unlocked. But here's the detail that matters. Sleep onset the moment people actually fell asleep was remarkably consistent, and it was tightly linked to a drop in ambient temperature after sunset, not to a clock, a notification, or a to-do list. Their bodies were responding to an environmental signal that modern life has almost completely erased. Climate-controlled rooms, screens that mimic daylight, schedules that ignore the setting sun entirely. So it's not that ancient humans needed exotic amounts of sleep modern people are somehow missing. It's that their rest was synchronized with a signal your body still runs on, whether or not you're honoring it. There's a third piece of evidence worth adding here. because it explains why the exhaustion of a no days off stretch feels different from ordinary tiredness. Evolutionary anthropologist Herman Pontzer, who studies energy expenditure in the Hadza of Tanzania, made a discovery that overturned a basic assumption about how the human body works. You'd expect that a population doing significantly more physical activity than the average modern adult would burn dramatically more total calories per day. Pontzer's research, published in the journal PLOS One and later expanded in his book, Burn, found something almost paradoxical. Daily energy expenditure among the Hadza was remarkably similar to that of sedentary adults in industrialized countries once body size was accounted for. The explanation Pontzer proposes is called constrained energy expenditure. Your body doesn't simply spend more the more you move. It reallocates. Push physical exertion up, and other systems, inflammation regulation, stress hormone, management, immune function, get quietly dialed back to compensate, holding total output within a tight evolved range. Your physiology isn't a bottomless battery. It's a budget, protecting a ceiling that Pontzer's data suggests has stayed remarkably consistent across radically different lifestyles. Here's what that means for you concretely. A body operating with zero recovery days isn't just running low on willpower. It may be quietly borrowing against systems that were never meant to be shorted for long. The same regulatory processes Pontzer identified as the ones your body throttles first, to keep total output within range. Chronic unbroken exertion isn't a more intense version of the ancestral pattern. It's a different pattern altogether, one that pushes past a budget your biology was never built to overdraw indefinitely. Now put all three pieces of evidence next to each other. Lee and Sussman showing a work rhythm with generous built-in slack. Siegel showing a sleep-wake cycle anchored to a signal your body still listens for, even in a world that stops sending it clearly. Pontzer, showing that your total energy budget is a tightly protected ceiling, not something rest days simply add on top of. Together they describe something specific, a nervous system built for rhythm. Periods of real exertion, followed by periods of real recovery on a cycle your biology expects, not one your calendar happens to allow. Let's reconstruct what an ordinary day might have actually looked like, because the contrast is the whole point. Picture waking with the light, no alarm because there's no need for one. A morning spent tracking, gathering, working with your hands focused and physically demanding but finite. By midday, the heat presses down and the group settles into shade. This is not a scheduled break negotiated with a manager. It is simply what the day calls for. Voices overlap in easy conversation, a hand reworking a tool without urgency. Then as the sun drops and the air cools, the work resumes softer now, winding toward the fire, toward food, toward people. When it's dark and the temperature drops, sleep comes in. It comes because the body was already waiting for exactly that signal. Here's the twist, and it's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. You've probably been telling yourself that 0 days off is simply the price of survival, the fee for a demanding modern world, something your ancestors would have understood and accepted as necessary. They wouldn't have understood it at all. Not because they were lazy, because their entire system, environmental, social, and physiological, was built around the assumption that real exertion gets balanced by real recovery, every single day, not saved up for a vacation 2 or 3 times a year. What changed wasn't human biology. What changed was the environment your biology now has to operate inside. The 8-hour block of unbroken desk time. The blue light at 11 p.m. telling your brain it's still daytime. The unspoken expectation that being constantly available is the same thing as being valuable. None of that is ancient. All of it is recent, and your body is still running ancestral software on hardware that was never updated to expect it. This is where it connects directly back to you right now today. Every uninterrupted stretch of 0 days off you push through isn't just draining your motivation. It's asking a 300,000-year-old physiological system to operate in conditions it was never designed for. Conditions with no midday shade, no temperature-driven sleep cue, no rhythm of real exertion followed by real recovery. The exhaustion you feel by Thursday isn't a personal failing. It's a mismatch between an ancient system and a relentless modern demand, playing out exactly the way Pontzer's energy budget research predicts it would, quietly internally in systems you can't see or feel until something finally gives. Think about what a typical stretch of grinding through it actually looks like today. Back-to-back meetings with no buffer between them because Buffers look like idle time on a calendar. Lunch eaten at a desk, scrolling a phone, while the body registers the meal as one more input competing for attention rather than a genuine pause. Evenings spent finishing what the day didn't leave room for under artificial light that tells the brain it's still afternoon long after the sun disappeared. None of these moments feel dramatic on their own. That's exactly the problem. Each one is a small withdrawal from a budget that, according to Ponce's data, was never designed to run an overdraft for months at a time. So go back to that question from the very beginning. When was the last time you had a day where nothing was expected of you? If the honest answer is, I can't remember, that's not a small scheduling inconvenience. It's a signal coming from a system that spent hundreds of thousands of years learning exactly how much rest a human being actually needs, and it's telling you that you're overdue.